Welcome to another deep dive into a story that's sure to captivate your emotions and keep you glued to the edge of your seat. Today, we explore the gripping tale of Alex, a man whose picture-perfect life crumbles in an instant when he discovers his wife, Emily, has betrayed him in the most heartbreaking way possible, with a younger, arrogant man. But what starts as an affair unravels into something far darker, a web of lies, manipulation, and danger involving a powerful figure who threatens everything Alex holds dear. This isn't just a story about infidelity, it's a high-stakes battle for truth, justice, and redemption. It's about how betrayal can break you down, but resilience can build you back up stronger. Get ready for intense drama, emotional twists, and a journey that will leave you questioning everything about love, loyalty, and what it takes to move forward. Stay with us as we unpack every shocking detail of this unforgettable saga. It was the summer of 2018 in a small, sun-soaked town in South Carolina. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. Nestled between sprawling oak trees and quiet, dusty roads was the modest home of Alex Parker, a 34-year-old high school teacher known for his easygoing smile and passion for literature. Alex wasn't the kind of guy who made waves. He preferred the predictable rhythm of his life, grading papers, coaching the debate team, and spending weekends fixing up the old house he shared with his wife, Emily. Emily Parker was everything Alex wasn't: bold, spontaneous, and magnetic. She had a way of lighting up a room with her laughter, and Alex had fallen for her almost instantly when they met in college. She worked as a graphic designer, freelancing from home, which gave her the freedom to explore her creative passions. To their friends and neighbors, they seemed like the perfect couple, complementing each other in all the right ways. But like all stories, this one had layers that weren't visible from the outside. Beneath their picture-perfect facade were cracks that neither Alex nor Emily could admit to, let alone repair. And that summer, those cracks widened into something they couldn't ignore. The opening scene of our story takes place on a sweltering July afternoon. Alex was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, a habit he'd developed during their first year of marriage, when Emily admitted she didn't particularly enjoy cooking. The radio played softly in the background, and Alex hummed along absent-mindedly. Emily was supposed to be in her studio upstairs, but Alex noticed she had been spending less time there lately. Just as he tossed the chopped onions into a sizzling pan, Emily breezed through the front door. Her face was flushed, and her hair was tied in a messy bun, like she'd been out running errands. But Alex couldn't help noticing the faint whiff of cologne that didn't belong to either of them. "You're back late," Alex said, keeping his tone casual. He stirred the onions, the sizzle filling the silence. "Yeah," Emily replied, her voice light, almost dismissive. "I got caught up at the coffee shop. You know how it is." Alex nodded, but something about her answer gnawed at him. The coffee shop she mentioned was a 10-minute drive away, but she'd been gone for nearly 3 hours. He chose not to press her, at least not yet. Instead, he asked, "Did you get a chance to look at that color palette I emailed you, the one for the school mural project?" Emily froze for half a second before flashing a smile. "Oh, right, I'll check it tomorrow. Sorry, it slipped my mind." It wasn't the first time Emily seemed distracted, but Alex brushed it off. After all, everyone had their off days, right? The following week, things started to shift in subtle ways. Emily was more distant. Her phone seemed glued to her hand, and she laughed at text messages Alex wasn't privy to. When he asked about it, she waved him off. "It's just work stuff," she said, her tone clipped. One night, while Emily was in the shower, Alex's curiosity got the better of him. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, lighting up with a notification. He knew it was wrong. He hated himself even as he reached for it, but something about her recent behavior left him uneasy. The message was from someone named Jay. It read, "Can't wait to see you again. Tonight was amazing." Alex felt the air leave his lungs. His hand shook as he put the phone back down, exactly as he'd found it. For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at the empty wall across the room. He wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, he knew better. The next morning, Alex tried to confront Emily, but the words got tangled in his throat. She was already up and dressed, a rarity since she usually liked to linger in bed on weekends. "I have to run some errands," she said, kissing him on the cheek before he could respond. Don't wait up for me. As the door clicked shut behind her, Alex felt a wave of frustration. If he didn't say something soon, the distance between them would only grow. That evening, when Emily returned, Alex decided to take a different approach. "How about we go out tonight?" he suggested, trying to keep his tone upbeat. "Dinner at La Bella's. It's been ages since we had a date night." Emily hesitated, her smile faltering. "Oh, I'd love to, but I already told Jen I'd help her with some design work tonight. Maybe another time." Alex nodded, forcing a smile, but as Emily walked away, the seed of doubt grew. Jen lived in another state, and the two rarely worked on projects together anymore. Something wasn't adding up. Determined to get answers, Alex started paying closer attention. He noticed the subtle things, the way Emily's mood brightened when her phone chimed, the unexplained charges on their credit card statements, and the nights she claimed to be working late, but returned home without so much as a sketch to show for it. One night, Alex followed her. He hated himself for doing it, felt like a character in a bad TV drama, but the need for clarity outweighed his guilt. Emily drove to a bar on the edge of town, parking in a dimly lit lot. Alex parked a few spaces away, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched as she stepped out of the car, her eyes scanning the lot before heading inside. Moments later, a man approached her. He was tall, with a confident stride and a smile that seemed too familiar. Emily greeted him with a hug that lingered just a little too long. Alex's stomach churned. He didn't stay to watch the rest. The confrontation came 2 days later. Emily was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, when Alex walked in. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed his turmoil. "Who's Jay?" he asked, his tone steady but laced with hurt. Emily froze, her face paling. "What are you talking about?" "Don't," Alex said, shaking his head. "I saw the messages. I saw you at the bar." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavier than any argument they'd ever had. Finally, Emily sighed, setting her phone down. "Alex, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," he challenged, his voice rising despite himself. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me." Emily hesitated, her eyes filling with tears, but instead of apologizing, she said the words Alex had been dreading. "I think we need to talk about where this marriage is going." Emily's words hung in the air like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. Alex stared at her, the woman he had loved and built his life around, struggling to understand how they had arrived at this moment. His mind raced, flipping through the pages of their shared memories, their wedding day, lazy Sunday mornings, even the small fights that seemed trivial now. But those memories couldn't erase the reality of what she had just said. "I think we need to talk about where this marriage is going." Her voice was calm, almost detached, as if she were discussing a business transaction rather than their life together. Alex's chest tightened. "You think we need to talk? You've been sneaking around, lying to my face, and now you want to talk?" Emily sighed, crossing her arms defensively. "It's not that simple. Alex, things between us haven't been right for a while. You have to admit that." He scoffed, incredulous. "You're blaming me. I've been here, Emily. I've been trying. I've been working myself to the bone to give us a good life. And you're, what, meeting some guy behind my back?" Emily's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't act like this is all on me. You've been so caught up in your routine, in your own world, that you didn't even notice I was unhappy. You didn't see that I needed more." "More?" Alex repeated, his voice rising. "What exactly is more, Emily? Attention, affection? Because if that's what you needed, you could have told me, but instead you chose to go to someone else." Her face softened for a moment, guilt flashing across her features. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quietly, but Alex wasn't in the mood for half-hearted excuses. "You didn't mean for it to happen," he echoed bitterly. "Emily, cheating isn't an accident. You don't just trip and fall into someone else's arms." The conversation spiraled into an argument, voices echoing through the house. For the first time, years of unresolved issues spilled out, accusations flying back and forth. Emily accused Alex of being emotionally unavailable, Of taking her for granted, Alex countered that he'd been the only one holding their marriage together while she checked out. By the time the fight ended, both of them were drained, the raw edges of their emotions exposed. Emily retreated upstairs, slamming the door behind her, while Alex sat in the dimly lit living room, staring blankly at the wall. He couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental between them had broken, and no amount of talking could fix it. The days that followed were tense and filled with silence. Emily stayed in the guest room, a clear but unspoken sign of the rift between them. They went through the motions of their daily lives, Alex at school, Emily in her studio, but the warmth that once filled their home had vanished. Despite his anger and hurt, Alex couldn't help but think about Emily's words during their fight. Had he really been so oblivious to her unhappiness? He replayed moments from their past in his mind, searching for signs he might have missed. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how distant they had become. Not overnight, but slowly, like a pot of water brought to a boil without him noticing. But even if he had failed to notice, did that justify her betrayal? One evening, Alex decided he couldn't sit in silence anymore. He needed clarity, needed to understand how things had gone so wrong. He found Emily in the guest room, sitting cross-legged on the bed with her laptop open. She looked up as he entered, her expression guarded. "Can we talk?" Alex asked, his voice softer than before. She hesitated but nodded. "Okay." Alex sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I just want to know why, Emily. Why him? Why now?" She closed her laptop, exhaling deeply. "I don't know how to explain it, Alex. I felt invisible, like I wasn't enough for you anymore. And then Jason came along, and he made me feel seen. He made me feel alive." Alex flinched at the mention of Jason's name. It was the first time she'd said it aloud, and hearing it felt like a dagger to his chest. "Do you love him?" Emily looked away, her silence answering the question better than words could. Alex felt the weight of her unspoken answer settle over him, suffocating and final. He stood abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. "I can't do this," he said, shaking his head. "I can't sit here and listen to you justify throwing our life away." "Alex, wait," Emily said, her voice tinged with desperation. "I don't want to hurt you, I don't know what I want." He turned to face her, his expression a mix of anger and sadness. "Well, maybe you should figure it out, Emily. Because I can't keep living in limbo while you decide whether I'm good enough for you." That night, Alex slept on the couch, unable to bear being in the same house as Emily. He stared at the ceiling, his mind a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. But beneath it all, there was a flicker of something else: determination. If Emily wasn't willing to fight for their marriage, he would not for her, but for himself. The next morning, Alex made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could take control of his future. He reached out to a marriage counselor, hoping to get a professional perspective on their situation. To his surprise, Emily agreed to attend the sessions with him. Their first session was awkward and filled with tension, but it forced them to confront the issues they had been avoiding. The counselor asked tough questions, pushing them to dig deeper into their emotions. For the first time, Alex heard Emily articulate the feelings she had been bottling up for years. He realized that while her actions were inexcusable, her pain was real. But therapy was a double-edged sword. The more they unpacked their issues, the clearer it became that their problems were bigger than either of them had admitted. The foundation of their marriage had been eroded by years of unspoken resentments and unmet needs, and rebuilding it seemed almost impossible. Meanwhile, Alex started focusing on himself in ways he hadn't before. He joined a local gym, began reconnecting with old friends, and even picked up his guitar, something he hadn't done in years. These small acts of self-care reminded him of who he was outside of his marriage, and they gave him a sense of strength he hadn't felt in months. Emily noticed the changes in Alex. He seemed more confident, more at ease with himself. It was a stark contrast to the man who had been consumed by anger and heartbreak just weeks earlier. But instead of bringing them closer together, it seemed to drive them further apart. Emily resented the fact that Alex seemed to be moving on while she was still stuck, unsure of what she wanted. The turning point came during their fourth counseling session. The counselor asked them to envision what their lives would look like in 5 years, whether together or apart. Alex spoke about wanting stability, about creating a life filled with purpose and joy, regardless of the outcome of their marriage. Emily, on the other hand, hesitated. Her vision was clouded by uncertainty, her answers vague and noncommittal. It was in that moment that Alex realized something profound. He couldn't save their marriage on his own. He had been holding on to the hope that Emily would choose him, that she would fight for their life together. But her silence told him everything he needed to know. As they left the counselor's office that day, Alex turned to Emily. "I think we need to stop pretending this is going to work," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "I'll always care about you, but I can't keep holding on to something that isn't there anymore." Emily looked at him, tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't argue. For the first time, she seemed to understand the depth of the pain she had caused. The weeks following Alex's decision to let go of the marriage were a whirlwind of emotions, legal proceedings, and soul-searching. Emily moved out, and their home, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, felt emptier than ever. Despite everything, Alex was determined to rebuild his life, one piece at a time. But just as he began to find a semblance of stability, life threw him a curveball he never saw coming. It started with a phone call late one Friday night. Alex was sitting on his couch, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand, when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with an unknown number, and for a moment he considered letting it go to voicemail. But something compelled him to answer. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end, followed by a familiar voice. "Alex, it's Jason." Alex's grip tightened on the glass. Jason, the man who had shattered his life, the man Emily had chosen over him. "What do you want?" Alex's voice was cold, laced with barely concealed anger. "I need to talk to you," Jason said, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "It's about Emily." Alex's chest tightened. "What about her?" "She's in trouble," Jason replied, his voice wavering. "And I think you're the only one who can help her." Against his better judgment, Alex agreed to meet Jason at a nearby diner. The place was nearly empty, the flickering neon sign outside casting a dim glow across the room. Jason was already there when Alex arrived, nervously drumming his fingers on the table. He looked different, haggard, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "What's this about?" Alex asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Jason hesitated, then leaned in. "Emily's been involved in some stuff that's way over her head." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You're going to have to be more specific." Jason took a deep breath. "There's a man, someone she's been working with. At first, it was just some freelance design gigs, but it turned into something else. He's dangerous, Alex. I think he's blackmailing her." The words hung in the air, heavy and disorienting. Alex stared at Jason, searching his face for any hint of a lie. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. "Because I can't help her," Jason admitted, his voice tinged with desperation. "She won't listen to me, but maybe she'll listen to you." The revelation shook Alex to his core. Emily, the woman he had spent years building a life with, was tangled in something far darker than he had imagined. Despite everything she had done, he couldn't just turn his back on her. Against his better judgment, he decided to confront her. Alex found Emily at a coffee shop downtown, her face pale and drawn. She looked up as he approached, surprise flickering across her features. "Alex," she said, her voice cautious. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he said, sitting down across from her. "Jason told me everything." Emily's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she might deny it. But then her shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Why, Emily?" Alex demanded, his voice rising. "Why get involved with someone like that?" Tears welled in her eyes as she explained. "It started out innocent. He offered me a big project, and I was desperate to prove myself. But then he started asking for more. He threatened to ruin me if I didn't do what he wanted." Alex's anger simmered beneath the surface, but he forced himself to stay calm. What does he have on you? Emily hesitated, then looked away. Photos, messages, things that would destroy my career, and yours, by association. Alex's mind raced. He wanted to be furious with her, to demand why she hadn't come to him sooner, but seeing her so vulnerable, so scared, softened something inside him. You should have told me, he said quietly. We could have dealt with this together. I was ashamed, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, and I didn't want to drag you into my mess. Determined to help Emily, Alex decided to take matters into his own hands. He spent days researching the man she was dealing with, a notorious businessman named Victor Crane. Victor's name was linked to numerous scandals, though nothing had ever been proven. He was untouchable, operating in the shadows and leaving no trace of his misdeeds. But Alex wasn't about to back down. With the help of an old friend who worked in cybersecurity, he began gathering evidence against Victor. Late nights turned into early mornings as Alex pored over financial records, emails, and social media accounts, piecing together a puzzle that revealed the full extent of Victor's crimes. The deeper he dug, the more dangerous the situation became. Alex started noticing unfamiliar cars parked near his house and receiving anonymous phone calls with veiled threats. It was clear that Victor knew someone was after him, but Alex refused to be intimidated. He had lost too much already: his marriage, his sense of stability, and he wasn't about to let Victor win. The climactic moment came one stormy night when Alex confronted Victor face to face. He had arranged to meet him in a public place, hoping the presence of witnesses would keep things civil. But as soon as Alex laid eyes on Victor, he knew he was dealing with someone who thrived on manipulation and fear. Victor greeted him with a smirk, his polished demeanor masking the menace beneath. Mr. Parker, he said smoothly, to what do I owe the pleasure? Alex didn't waste time with pleasantries. You're going to leave Emily alone, he said, his voice firm, and you're going to give me everything you have on her. Victor chuckled, shaking his head. You've got guts, I'll give you that, but you're in way over your head. Maybe, Alex admitted, but I've also got something you don't. Proof of every shady deal you've made, every law you've broken, and if anything happens to Emily or me, that proof goes straight to the authorities. For the first time, Victor's confident facade cracked. His eyes narrowed as he studied Alex, weighing his options. You've made your point, he said finally, but this isn't over. Alex watched as Victor walked away, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew the fight wasn't truly over, but for the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. When Alex returned home that night, he found Emily waiting for him on the porch. She looked up at him, her expression a mix of relief and guilt. Did you? It's handled, Alex said, sitting down beside her. But this has to stop, Emily. No more secrets, no more lies. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Alex. For everything. Their journey toward healing wouldn't be easy, but in that moment, they both knew they had taken the first step. The morning after Alex confronted Victor, the storm hadn't just left the skies gray. It left Alex feeling the weight of everything he had endured. The confrontation was a turning point, but it was also the beginning of the end. Victor Crane was the kind of man who didn't take threats lightly, and Alex knew the reprieve was only temporary. Emily, though grateful for Alex's efforts, was still grappling with the fallout of her choices. She spent most of her time avoiding eye contact and retreating into herself. Their conversations, while civil, lacked the warmth they once had. It was as though they were both walking on eggshells, unsure of what the next day might bring. But just when Alex thought the worst was over, another revelation sent shockwaves through his already fragile world. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when Alex received an email from Victor's lawyer. The subject line was simple but ominous. Cease and desist. The email accused Alex of slander, theft of private information, and harassment. Attached was a lengthy document threatening legal action if Alex didn't hand over every piece of evidence he had collected. Alex stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He knew Victor was bluffing. Most of the evidence had been gathered legally or anonymously, but the threat was still a stark reminder of Victor's reach. Alex's hands trembled as he closed the laptop. He was playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were higher than ever. When he told Emily about the email, her reaction was immediate and visceral. "You need to stop," she said, her voice laced with panic. "You've done enough, Alex. You've put yourself in enough danger." Alex shook his head. "If I stop now, he wins. He'll keep manipulating people, ruining lives. I can't let that happen." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted you to get dragged into this. This is my mess, Alex, not yours." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft but firm. "It stopped being just your mess the moment he threatened our family. We're in this together, whether you like it or not." The tension reached a boiling point 2 days later when Alex's friend in cybersecurity, Liam, called with urgent news. "You need to come to my office," Liam said, his voice low and hurried. "I found something, but it's big." Alex didn't hesitate. He drove across town, his mind racing with possibilities. When he arrived, Liam ushered him into a small, cluttered office and closed the door behind them. "I've been digging deeper into Victor's accounts," Liam began, pulling up a series of documents on his computer. "And I found a transaction that ties him to something much bigger than blackmail or fraud." Alex leaned in, scanning the screen. At first glance, it was just a series of bank transfers, but then he noticed the recipient's name, Corvus Holdings. "What's Corvus Holdings?" Alex asked, his brow furrowed. Liam hesitated before replying. "It's a shell company, but more importantly, it's connected to a trafficking ring that the FBI's been investigating for years." Alex's stomach dropped. He had been prepared for blackmail, fraud, even threats. But this was a whole new level of danger. "This changes everything," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If we go to the authorities with this—" "Then we need to be careful," Liam interrupted. "Victor's dangerous and people like him don't go down without a fight." Armed with this new information, Alex made the difficult decision to contact the FBI. It was a risky move, but he knew it was the only way to ensure Victor was brought to justice. He met with an agent the following day, providing them with everything he and Liam had uncovered. The agent, a no-nonsense woman named Agent Taylor, assured Alex that they would investigate further, but warned him to be cautious. "People like Victor Crane have a way of making problems disappear," she said, her tone grave. "We'll do our part, but you need to keep your head down and stay out of sight." Alex nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was far from over. As the investigation unfolded, the tension between Alex and Emily began to thaw, if only slightly. They spent more time talking, sharing meals, and even reminiscing about happier days. It was a tentative truce, born out of necessity rather than reconciliation, but it was progress nonetheless. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Emily broke the silence. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" Alex considered her question carefully. "I think we can try," he said finally, "but it's going to take time." Emily nodded, her eyes glistening. "I want to try, Alex, I really do." It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. For the first time in months, Alex allowed himself to hope that they might find a way forward, together. But that hope was short-lived. Late one night, Alex was woken by the sound of shattering glass. He bolted upright, his heart racing, and grabbed the baseball bat he kept under the bed. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face pale with fear. "Stay here," Alex whispered, creeping down the hallway toward the source of the noise. In the living room, he found the front window shattered, glass littering the floor. A brick lay among the shards, and attached to it was a piece of paper. Alex unfolded it, his hands trembling as he read the message. "Drop it, or else." He felt his blood run cold. This wasn't just a threat, it was a promise Victor was escalating, and Alex knew they were running out of time. When the police arrived, they took a report but offered little comfort. Without cameras or witnesses, there was no way to trace the culprit. Alex's frustration boiled over as he watched the patrol car drive away. He felt like he was fighting a battle he couldn't win, and the stakes were getting higher by the minute. The final turning point came a week later when Alex received a call from Agent Taylor. "We have enough evidence to move on Victor," she said, "but we need your help to bring him in." "What do you need me to do?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "We need you to wear a wire," Taylor replied. "Victor trusts you enough to meet face to face. If we can get him to incriminate himself on tape, it'll be the final nail in his coffin." Alex hesitated. The thought of confronting Victor again made his skin crawl, but he knew it was the only way to end this once and for all. "I'll do it," he said, his resolve hardening. "Whatever it takes." The climactic confrontation was set for a secluded parking lot on the outskirts of town. As Alex waited for Victor to arrive, his heart pounded in his chest. The wire beneath his shirt felt like a burning brand, a constant reminder of the risk he was taking. When Victor's sleek black car pulled up, Alex squared his shoulders and stepped out to meet him. Victor emerged, his expression as smug as ever, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You've been busy," Victor said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But you should have stayed out of it, Alex. Now you've made things messy." Alex forced a smirk. "Messy's what I do best." The conversation escalated quickly, with Victor growing more agitated as Alex baited him. Finally, Victor let his guard down, boasting about his connections and dismissing the idea that anyone could touch him. "You think you've got me cornered?" Victor sneered. "I own this town. No one can stop me. Not you, not the FBI, no one." It was all the agents needed. Moments later, the sound of sirens filled the air as unmarked cars swarmed the parking lot. Victor's expression shifted from confidence to panic as he was surrounded. Agent Taylor stepped forward, her badge glinting in the dim light. "Victor Crane, you're under arrest." As Victor was led away in handcuffs, Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was over. Finally, it was over. Victor Crane's arrest sent ripples through the community news outlets picked up the story almost immediately, branding him as the mastermind behind a web of blackmail, fraud, and far worse crimes. For Alex, it was a moment of vindication, but it also marked the beginning of the fallout. Despite Victor's arrest, the tension in Alex's life didn't dissipate overnight. His involvement in the case had put a target on his back, and though he had taken precautions, the fear of retaliation lingered. He kept a close watch on his surroundings, double-checking locks and ensuring Emily was never alone. Emily, for her part, was grappling with her own guilt. She had thought Victor was a means to an end, a way to reignite her career, but she had underestimated his ruthlessness. Now, as she watched the story unfold on the news, she couldn't shake the weight of her choices. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she said one evening, her voice heavy with regret. Alex looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I know," he said simply, "but intentions don't erase the consequences." It was a hard truth, one that neither of them could ignore. As the legal case against Victor unfolded, Alex found himself unexpectedly thrust into the spotlight. His testimony was crucial to the prosecution's case, and he spent hours meeting with lawyers and preparing for the trial. The process was exhausting, but Alex was determined to see it through. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the chaos of Alex's life outside. It was a place of order and procedure, where every word carried weight. When Alex took the stand, he felt the eyes of the jury, the lawyers, and even Victor himself bearing down on him. "Mr. Parker," the prosecutor began, "can you describe your interactions with Mr. Crane and how you came to uncover his activities?" Alex took a deep breath, his voice steady as he recounted the events that had led to Victor's arrest. He spoke about Emily's initial involvement, the threats, and the evidence he had uncovered with Liam's help. Throughout his testimony, he remained calm and composed, even when Victor's defense lawyer tried to rattle him. "Mr. Parker," the lawyer said, his tone sharp, "isn't it true that you acted out of personal vendetta rather than a sense of justice?" Alex met the lawyer's gaze, unflinching. "I acted because someone had to. Victor Crane has been ruining lives for years, and if standing up to him makes it personal, so be it." The jury seemed to take note of his conviction, and as Alex stepped down from the stand, he felt a flicker of hope that justice might actually prevail. The trial was grueling, stretching on for weeks as witnesses testified and evidence was presented. Emily was called to testify as well, and though she was visibly nervous, she spoke honestly about her involvement and the fear that had kept her silent for so long. "I made mistakes," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But Victor manipulated me, Just like he manipulated so many others, I just hope my testimony helps ensure he can't hurt anyone else." Her words resonated with the jury, and Alex couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. Despite everything, Emily was trying to make amends. As the trial neared its conclusion, tensions reached a boiling point. Victor's defense team pulled out all the stops, attempting to discredit witnesses and undermine the prosecution's case, but the mountain of evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. The final day of the trial was a spectacle. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation as the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty on all counts. The words rang out, and for a moment the room was silent. Then a wave of relief swept over Alex. Victor Crane had been brought to justice, and the shadow he had cast over their lives was finally lifting. In the weeks that followed, Alex and Emily faced the daunting task of picking up the pieces. Their relationship was still fractured, and though they had worked together to bring Victor down, they both knew it wasn't enough to heal the wounds left behind. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Alex finally broached the topic they had been avoiding. "So, what now?" Emily sighed, staring out at the horizon. I think we both need time to figure out who we are, what we want." Alex nodded, though the thought of letting go was bittersweet. "I agree, but no matter what happens, I hope you find peace, Emily, I really do." Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked at him. "You too, Alex." The decision to separate was mutual, and though it was painful, it was also freeing. Alex threw himself into his work, finding solace in the steady rhythm of teaching and the joy of mentoring his students. He also reconnected with friends and family, rediscovering the support network he had once taken for granted. Emily, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding her career and her sense of self. She sought therapy to address the choices that had led her down such a destructive path, and slowly but surely, she began to heal. Their lives moved forward in parallel, and though they were no longer together, they remained cordial, even supportive. It wasn't the ending Alex had envisioned, but it was one he could live with. Looking back, Alex realized that the experience had changed him in ways he hadn't expected. He had learned the importance of boundaries, of standing up for himself, and of letting go of things he couldn't control. And though the scars remained, they served as a reminder of his resilience. The courtroom victory over Victor Crane marked the end of one battle, but for Alex the journey was far from over. The aftermath of the trial was a time of reckoning, a moment where life slowed down just enough to reveal the emotional wreckage left behind. Though justice had been served, Alex couldn't ignore the scars, both seen and unseen, that the ordeal had left on everyone involved. Alex was sitting at his kitchen table staring at the remnants of his morning coffee when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen made him hesitate. Emily. For a brief moment, he considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of him. "Hey, Alex." Emily's voice was soft, cautious. I wanted to thank you for everything. I don't know if I ever said that." Alex leaned back in his chair, unsure of how to respond. "You don't have to thank me, Emily. You've been through just as much." "No," she insisted. "I mean it. You didn't have to help me, not after everything I did, but you did, and I'll never forget that." There was a pause, the kind that felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "How are you holding up?" Emily exhaled, and he could almost hear the weight in her voice. "I'm figuring it out. Therapy helps. So does keeping busy, but it's a process." Alex nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Yeah, it always is." Their conversation was brief, but it felt significant. It was the first time they had spoken since the trial ended, and though it didn't resolve everything, it was a start, a small step toward closure. In the weeks that followed, Alex focused on reclaiming his life. He poured his energy into his teaching, using his story as a cautionary tale to inspire his students to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. It wasn't always easy. Some days, the memories of the past year threatened to overwhelm him, but he found solace in the little victories. One of those victories came in the form of an unexpected reunion. Liam, his cybersecurity-savvy friend, invited Alex out for drinks one evening. It was a rare moment of normalcy, a chance to laugh and reflect on everything they had been through. You know, Liam said, raising his glass, you've got a knack for this whole justice thing. Ever thought about making a career out of it? Alex chuckled, shaking his head. I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime. Fair enough, Liam replied, grinning. But if you ever change your mind, let me know. The world could use more people like you. Despite the progress he was making, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The trial had given him purpose, but now that it was over, he found himself searching for meaning in the quiet moments of his life. It was during one of those moments, while cleaning out his garage, that he stumbled upon something that reignited his spark. Tucked away in a dusty box was his old guitar, a relic from his college days Alex hadn't played in years, but as he ran his fingers over the strings, a familiar warmth spread through him. That evening, he sat on his porch, strumming softly as the sun dipped below the horizon. The music wasn't perfect. His fingers fumbled, and the chords were rusty, but it felt like a piece of himself was coming back to life. Music became Alex's refuge, a way to process everything he had been through. He started playing regularly, even performing at open mic nights at a local cafe. It was there that he met someone who would change his life in ways he never expected. Her name was Clara, a singer-songwriter with a voice that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 stories. She was performing the night Alex decided to take the stage, and her music stopped him in his tracks. There was something raw, something real, in the way she sang, and Alex found himself captivated. After her set, Alex mustered the courage to introduce himself. "You've got an incredible voice," he said, feeling oddly nervous. Clara smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Thanks, you weren't too bad yourself." They spent the rest of the evening talking, sharing stories about their lives and their love of music. Clara had her own share of struggles, failed relationships, creative blocks, but there was a resilience about her that Alex couldn't help but admire. Over the next few weeks, their friendship blossomed. They started collaborating on songs, spending hours in Clara's tiny studio, lost in the rhythm of their creativity. For Alex, it was a welcome distraction, a reminder that life was still full of possibilities. But as their connection deepened, Alex couldn't ignore the lingering doubts. Could he open his heart again after everything he had been through? Was he ready to let someone new into his life, or was he still holding on to the past? The turning point came during a late-night recording session. Clara was sitting at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys as she hummed a melody. Alex watched her, a mix of admiration and uncertainty swirling in his chest. "What's on your mind?" Clara asked, breaking the silence. Alex hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about everything about you, about us, and I guess I'm scared." Clara turned to him, her expression gentle. "Scared of what?" "Of getting hurt again," Alex admitted. "Of trusting someone and having it all fall apart." Clara nodded, her gaze steady. "I get it, but you can't let fear keep you from living. Alex, life's too short for that." Her words hit him harder than he expected. She was right. He couldn't let the past define him, couldn't let his pain hold him back. If he wanted to move forward, he had to take a leap of faith. And so, he did. Alex and Clara's relationship grew slowly, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. They supported each other's dreams, encouraged each other's growth, and found joy in the simple moments. Shared meals, late-night jam sessions, and quiet walks under the stars. For Alex, it wasn't just about finding love again. It was about rediscovering himself, about embracing the person he had become in the wake of everything he had endured. And for the first time in a long time, he felt whole. Months after Victor Crane's sentencing, Alex found himself standing at a crossroads, not unlike the one he faced when his life first spiraled out of control. But this time, he wasn't consumed by anger or fear. Instead, he felt a cautious optimism, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could finally leave the past behind. One morning, Alex received an unexpected letter in the mail. The return address was from Emily. He hesitated before opening it, unsure of what she could possibly have left to say. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting unmistakably hers. "Dear Alex, I've spent so much time thinking about everything, about us, about the choices I made, and about the pain I caused. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for all of it. I've been working on myself, trying to be better, trying to understand why I made the mistakes I did. And while I don't expect your forgiveness, I hope someday you can find it in your heart to let go of the hurt. You deserve happiness, Alex. And I hope you found it. Thank you for everything. For standing by me when I didn't deserve it, and for showing me what strength really looks like. Take care, Emily. Alex read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave him a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. Emily was moving forward, and now, so could he. Meanwhile, Alex's bond with Clara continued to grow. Their connection wasn't flashy or overly dramatic. It was steady, reliable, and deeply fulfilling. They brought out the best in each other, challenging one another to chase their dreams while also providing a safe space to land. One evening, as they sat on Clara's couch with their guitars in hand, she turned to him with a mischievous smile. "I've been thinking," she said, plucking a few chords. "What if we played a duet at the next open mic night?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "You want to perform together?" "Why not?" Clara replied, her eyes twinkling. "You've got the voice, I've got the harmonies. We'd kill it." Alex laughed, but the idea excited him more than he cared to admit. "All right, let's do it. But if we bomb, I'm blaming you." "Deal," Clara said, grinning. The night of the performance, the cafe was packed. Alex felt a familiar rush of nerves as they stepped onto the small stage, but Clara's presence grounded him. They launched into their song, a heartfelt ballad they had written together, and as the music filled the room, Alex felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it wasn't the cheers that mattered. It was the look on Clara's face, the joy, the pride, the connection, that made Alex realize just how far he had come. But life, as always, had a way of throwing curveballs. One afternoon, Alex received a call from Agent Taylor, the FBI agent who had helped bring down Victor. Her tone was serious, almost apologetic. "Alex, I wanted to give you a heads up," she said. "We've uncovered some loose ends in Victor's operation. Nothing major, but enough to warrant further investigation." "What does that mean?" Alex asked, his chest tightening. "It means there's a chance someone connected to Victor might come sniffing around," Taylor replied. "I don't think you're in immediate danger, but I wanted you to be aware." Alex thanked her for the warning, but the conversation left him uneasy. He had worked so hard to rebuild his life, and the thought of being dragged back into Victor's shadow was almost too much to bear. Over the next few weeks, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He noticed unfamiliar cars parked near his house, strangers lingering a little too long in public places. He even found a note slipped under his windshield wiper one morning. It was cryptic, but chilling. "Some debts don't stay buried." Alex brought the note to Agent Taylor, who assured him they were monitoring the situation, but her words did little to ease his anxiety. He began taking precautions, changing his routines, installing security cameras, and even keeping a baseball bat by his front door. Clara noticed the change in him almost immediately. "What's going on, Alex?" she asked one evening as they sat on her porch. He hesitated, then told her everything about Victor, the trial, the note, and the lingering threat. Clara listened intently, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "We'll get through this," she said firmly. "You're not alone in this, Alex. Remember that." Her words bolstered him, but the tension lingered. Alex knew that whoever had left the note wasn't just making idle threats, and it was only a matter of time before they made their next move. That move came late one night when Alex was locking up the cafe after another open mic performance. The streets were quiet, the air crisp with the promise of rain. As he walked toward his car, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, his pulse quickening, but saw no one. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice echoing off the empty buildings. Silence. Alex quickened his pace, his eyes scanning the shadows. He was almost to his car when a figure stepped out from the alley. The man was tall, dressed in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by a hood. "Alex Parker," the man said, his voice low and menacing. "You've been making waves." Alex's grip tightened on his keys. "Who are you?" "Let's just say I'm someone who cleans up messes," the man replied. "And you're a mess that needs cleaning." Before Alex could respond, the man lunged at him. Alex dodged, adrenaline surging as he swung his guitar case like a weapon. The clash was chaotic, a flurry of punches, kicks, and desperate movements. Alex fought with everything he had, but the man was stronger, more experienced. Just when it seemed Alex might be overpowered, a blinding light flooded the alley. A car screeched to a halt, and Clara leapt out, brandishing a tire iron. "Back off!" she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The man hesitated, then cursed under his breath before disappearing into the shadows. Alex leaned against the wall, breathing heavily as Clara rushed to his side. "Are you okay?" she asked, her hands trembling. "Yeah," Alex managed, though his body ached. "Thanks to you." The attack was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the battle wasn't truly over, but it also strengthened Alex's resolve. With Clara by his side and the FBI on high alert, he knew he had the tools, and the people, to face whatever came next. As he sat on his porch later that night, nursing his wounds and watching the stars, Alex felt a strange sense of calm. Life would always be messy, unpredictable, and sometimes downright cruel. But it was also beautiful, filled with second chances, unexpected allies, and the quiet strength to keep moving forward. The days after the alleyway attack were a blur for Alex. His body ached from the fight, but it was the psychological weight that pressed on him the hardest. Whoever had confronted him wasn't just delivering a warning, they were sending a message that the fight was far from over. Clara insisted on staying with Alex for a few days, refusing to let him face this alone. Her presence was a balm to his frayed nerves, though he hated that she had been dragged into the chaos. Still, he couldn't deny the comfort he felt with her around. One evening, as they sat in his living room, Clara broke the silence. "You know, you're going to have to face this head-on." Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. "I thought I already did. Victor's in prison. What else do they want?" Clara placed a hand on his knee, her expression firm but kind. "This isn't just about Victor, it's about the people he left behind, the ones who are still trying to clean up his mess. You need to be ready for whatever comes next." Her words lingered in his mind long after she'd gone to bed. She was right, of course. He couldn't live in fear, waiting for the next attack. If he wanted to reclaim his life, he had to confront the threat head-on. The next day, Alex called Agent Taylor. "I need to know what you've found," he said, his voice steady. "Who's behind this? And how do I stop them?" Taylor hesitated on the other end of the line. "We've identified a few of Victor's former associates who might have a motive," she said. "But without concrete evidence, we can't make a move." "What about the guy who attacked me?" Alex pressed. "Can't you track him down?" "We're working on it," Taylor assured him. "But Alex, I need you to be careful. These people are dangerous. If you get too close, you could end up in even more trouble." Alex's jaw tightened. He appreciated her concern, but he wasn't about to sit on the sidelines. "Just tell me what you've got," he said. Taylor relented, providing him with the names of two individuals suspected of working with Victor. One was a former enforcer with a violent streak. The other was a corporate fixer known for making problems disappear. Both were dangerous, but Alex was determined to find answers. Armed with this new information, Alex began piecing together a plan. He knew he couldn't take on these men alone, so he reached out to Liam for help. Together, they delved into the suspects' backgrounds, searching for connections and vulnerabilities. Their efforts paid off when they discovered a pattern in one of the enforcer's movements. He frequented a dive bar on the outskirts of town, a seedy place that seemed like the perfect cover for shady dealings. "You're not seriously thinking about going there, are you?" Liam asked, his brow furrowed. Alex nodded. "I need to know what he's planning. If I can get close enough to hear him talk, maybe I can figure out what they're after." "That's a terrible idea," Liam said, shaking his head. "But I know I can't talk you out of it." The dive bar was everything Alex expected. Dimly lit, smoky, and filled with rough-looking patrons. He kept his head down as he entered, scanning the room until he spotted the enforcer sitting in a corner booth. The man was large, with a shaved head and a permanent scowl etched onto his face. Alex took a seat at the bar, positioning himself close enough to overhear the conversation. He ordered a drink and pretended to be absorbed in his phone, all the while straining to catch snippets of the enforcer's conversation. "You think he's gonna fold?" the enforcer asked his companion, a wiry man with a nervous energy. "Doesn't matter," the other man replied. "We keep the pressure on sooner or later. He'll slip up." Alex's stomach churned. They were talking about him. There was no doubt about it. He listened intently, trying to pick up any details that might give him an edge. But just as he was beginning to piece things together, the enforcer's gaze shifted in his direction. Alex's heart skipped a beat as their eyes met. He quickly looked away, but it was too late. The enforcer stood, his heavy boots thudding against the floor as he approached. "You lost, buddy?" the man growled, looming over Alex. Alex forced himself to stay calm. "Just grabbing a drink," he said, his voice steady. "Didn't mean to bother anyone." The enforcer narrowed his eyes, then glanced at Alex's hands. "You don't look like the type to hang around here. What's your angle?" Before Alex could respond, the bartender intervened. "Leave him alone, Joe," he said. "He's not causing any trouble." Joe, apparently the enforcer's name, glared at the bartender but eventually backed off. Alex exhaled slowly, his pulse racing as he watched the man return to his booth. Alex left the bar as soon as it felt safe, his mind racing with the information he had gathered. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but he couldn't stop now. The pieces were finally starting to come together, and he was determined to see it through. When he got home, Clara was waiting for him, her arms crossed and her expression equal parts worry and frustration. "Where have you been?" she demanded. Alex hesitated, then told her everything. About the bar, the enforcer, and the fragments of conversation he had overheard. Clara listened, her concern growing with every word. "You can't keep doing this, Alex," she said when he finished. "You're putting yourself in danger." "I know," he admitted, "but I don't have a choice. If I don't figure out what they're planning, they'll just keep coming." Clara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Then let me help. We're stronger together, remember?" Alex nodded, grateful for her support. Together, they began brainstorming their next move, determined to uncover the truth before it was too late. The following days were a whirlwind of research and planning. Alex and Clara worked tirelessly, piecing together the enforcer's connections and movements. Their efforts led them to a warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place they suspected was being used as a meeting point for Victor's remaining associates. As they prepared to investigate, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the climax of their story was fast approaching. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome was anything but certain. The warehouse loomed in the distance, a shadowy figure against the moonlit sky. Alex and Clara sat in the car, parked a safe distance away, their hearts pounding in unison. This was it, the moment they had been working toward, the confrontation that would finally bring closure to the nightmare they'd been living. "Are you sure about this?" Clara asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. Alex nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I have to be. It's the only way to put an end to this." They exchanged a glance, the weight of their journey reflected in their eyes. Then, with a deep breath, Alex stepped out of the car, motioning for Clara to stay put. He knew the risks, but he couldn't let her get dragged any further into danger. The warehouse was eerily quiet as Alex crept inside, his footsteps muffled by the dusty concrete floor. He could hear faint voices in the distance, and as he moved closer, he spotted the enforcer, Joe, standing with a group of men. They were huddled around a table, their conversation hushed but intense. Alex positioned himself behind a stack of crates, straining to hear what they were saying. "We need to finish this," one of the men said, his voice sharp. "Parker's been a thorn in our side for too long." Joe nodded. "Agreed, we take him out, and this whole thing goes away." Alex's blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to intimidate him, they were planning to eliminate him. Before he could process the gravity of the situation, the crates shifted slightly beneath his weight, sending a faint echo through the warehouse. The men froze, their eyes scanning the room. Alex held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "Someone's here," Joe growled, pulling out a gun. "Spread out, find him." Alex's mind raced as he backed away, trying to stay out of sight. He needed a plan, and fast. Just as one of the men rounded the corner, Alex grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung, knocking the man unconscious. The commotion drew the others, and soon the warehouse erupted into chaos. Alex darted between the crates, using the shadows to his advantage. He managed to disarm one of the men, his adrenaline fueling every move. But Joe was relentless, his booming voice echoing through the space as he hunted Alex down. "You think you can stop us, Parker?" Joe shouted. "You're nothing but a dead man walking." Alex didn't respond. He couldn't afford to. His focus was on survival, on finding a way to outsmart the men who had cornered him. Outside, Clara sat in the car, her anxiety mounting with every passing second. When she heard the muffled sounds of a struggle coming from the warehouse, she knew she couldn't just sit there grabbing her phone. She dialed Agent Taylor, her voice shaking as she explained the situation. "Stay where you are," Taylor instructed. "We're on our way." But Clara couldn't wait. She grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and sprinted toward the warehouse, her determination overriding her fear. Inside, Alex and Joe faced off in the center of the room. Joe was larger, stronger, and armed, but Alex refused to back down. Their fight was brutal, each blow a testament to their desperation. When Joe finally pinned Alex against a wall, his gun aimed at Alex's chest, it seemed like the end. But just as Joe pulled the trigger, Clara burst into the room, shining the flashlight directly into his eyes. The sudden light disoriented him, giving Alex the chance to knock the gun from his hand and deliver a final decisive punch. Joe crumpled to the ground, unconscious. "Clara!" Alex exclaimed, rushing to her side. "What are you doing here?" "Saving your life," she replied, her breath coming in short gasps. Before Alex could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air. Moments later, Agent Taylor and her team stormed the warehouse. Rounding up the remaining men, Taylor approached Alex, her expression a mix of relief and exasperation. "You really don't know how to stay out of trouble, do you?" she said. Alex managed a weak smile. "Just doing my part." With Joe and his crew in custody, the danger finally seemed to be over. The FBI's investigation revealed that the men had been operating as remnants of Victor Crane's organization, desperate to reclaim their power. But thanks to Alex and Clara's bravery, their plans had been thwarted. As the dust settled, Alex and Clara found themselves standing outside the warehouse, the cool night air washing over them. They were battered and exhausted, but alive, and together. "You were incredible in there," Alex said, his voice filled with gratitude. Clara smiled, though her eyes were heavy with emotion. "So were you." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of everything they had endured settling over them. Then, without thinking, Alex pulled Clara into a tight embrace. She held him just as fiercely, their connection stronger than ever. In the weeks that followed, Alex began to rebuild his life with a renewed sense of purpose. The threat that had loomed over him was gone, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free. Clara became a constant presence in his life, not just as a partner, but as a source of strength and inspiration. Together, they continued to create music, their bond deepening with every note. Emily, too, found her own path. She reached out to Alex one final time, not with a letter, but with a phone call. Their conversation was brief but meaningful, a chance to express gratitude and forgiveness on both sides. It was the closure they both needed, a reminder that growth often comes from the hardest moments. The final scene of Alex's story wasn't one of grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It was simple. A warm summer evening, a small cafe, and the sound of Alex and Clara performing together. The room was filled with friends, new and old, their laughter and applause a testament to the life Alex had reclaimed. As the song ended, Alex looked out at the crowd, a smile spreading across his face. He had faced betrayal, danger, and heartbreak, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live a life filled with love, creativity, and meaning. And with Clara by his side, he knew that the best was yet to come. Thank you for watching this incredible story unfold. If you enjoyed this journey of resilience, redemption, and love, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next amazing recap. Until next time, Take care and keep believing in second chances.